This is the testimony of Marlon. Marlon was the father of a daughter who was repeated victim of grooming, as well as being repeatedly failed by authorities. Marlon reported his 14-year-old daughter, Scarlett, missing a number of times because she was being groomed and exploited. The police informed social services that what Marlon was doing was appropriate as he was acting to safeguard his daughter. However, social services did not accept the police's assessment and instead dragged out the investigation for 3 months. During that time, his daughter disclosed concerns to a school, which resulted in social services attending Marlon's home. While his daughter was present, they told him that if he tried to stop her from leaving the house, she would call social services or the police. Social services undermining his parental authority resulted in her missing episodes escalating dramatically. Social services effectively gave her permission to go missing, and the case was then closed without meaningful intervention. Marlon placed a formal complaint to social services, stating that he was struggling to cope with his daughter's missing episodes. The social worker assigned to him following this openly stated to him that they were only taking the case because of his complaint. This made him feel like the problem rather than a parent concerned with safeguarding his daughter from abuse. On one occasion, Marlon stood in front of the door to prevent his daughter from leaving late at night, resulting in her repeatedly kicking him and breaking 3 of his fingers. He reported this to social services, who simply stated he should walk away when she becomes violent. Even after showing them the bruises on his back that he received as he walked away, they did not change the advice they gave. Marlon remains convinced that if his child were male and he were female, the response would have been different. Marlon would often spend his evenings driving in search of his daughter until 3 or 4 a.m. while having work the following day, which his employer is not supportive of. He often reported her missing to the police, who would sometimes turn up to his house many hours later. On one occasion, he saw footage of the police saying not to bother even waking him. This made him feel more like a problem rather than it being the safeguarding emergency that it was. Scarlett was unlawfully excluded from the school due to grooming-related behavior and assigned a new school where the grooming gang operated. A multi-agency risk management meeting was eventually convened with Children's Services and the police's missing from home team. While the meeting was ongoing, one of the police officers in attendance told Marlon to stop reporting his daughter missing. Marlon challenged this, which resulted in the police officer shouting at him in front of all in attendance. The officer has since been dismissed. The social worker and manager present did not intervene, but privately acknowledged he was right to continue to report his daughter missing. They refused to launch a formal complaint against the officer. Shortly after this, his daughter went missing for several days and was eventually found at Marlon's mother's house, unkempt, distressed, and stating that she had been raped. Care staff returned her to the location of the rape, thereby destroying forensics opportunities, and failed to report it to the police until days later. Marlon had to make his own referral to the Rape Crisis Center, by which time forensics evidence was lost. The perpetrator was arrested but bailed with the condition not to contact Marlon's daughter. Immediately upon leaving the station, he called her and threatened her life. He was an adult and drug dealer, and his associates soon began attending Marlon's home. His daughter was terrified of them, and all the women began to groom and manipulate Marlon's daughter under the guise of friendship. After another missing episode, Marlon was able to trace his daughter to a specific property. Despite repeated calls and reports of men entering the property, both police and social services failed to remove her on an issue of an abduction warning notice. His daughter was later found to be the victim of criminal exploitation, including drug supply, prostitution, and being forced to dig up a firearm. These acts were directed by the older woman, amongst others. At this point, the impact on Marlon was catastrophic. He was physically exhausted, anxious, depressed, and lived in constant fear. He was attacked by masked individuals in his home, with the police response delayed and dismissive. Marlon's daughter was eventually taken into secure care, where she was subjected to further abuse, including sexual abuse, by staff and other children, neglect, and safeguarding failures. Marlon made multiple complaints. At a court hearing, social services attempted to place his daughter on a child protective plan for emotional abuse and neglect by Marlon himself. However, the judge intervened and ordered this to be amended to be recorded as beyond parental control. Marlon's daughter continued to be moved between unsuitable placements. She was groomed repeatedly, trafficked, forced into drug supply, and raped by adult men. She became pregnant as a result of rape. The handling of her termination by professionals was traumatic and negligent. Police later charged Scarlett with intent to supply Class A drugs, despite her being a victim of trafficking and on the National Referral Mechanism, or the NRM. Scarlett was placed in a unit run entirely by male Muslim staff, where she was groomed again. Racist abuse and extremist comments were made to her. Marlon again raised concerns which were ignored. Despite his repeated attempts to help his daughter, he has experienced many instances of violence from her as a result of the trauma and grooming. He has experienced many assaults, received black eyes, and had to sleep barricaded in his room. He repeatedly requested domestic abuse support, but was refused because he was a male parent. He has been forced to complete parenting courses and blamed for his daughter's abuse. The whole experience has harmed Marlon financially, emotionally, and psychologically. He states it has destroyed his life. He's no longer the person he used to be. And Marlon's case highlights that parents can also be the victims of both grooming networks, as well as widespread institutional failure. If you would like to hear Marlon's story in greater detail, he recently published a book about his experiences titled In Plain Sight. Marlon. Scarlett went missing again for several days. When she was eventually found, she was unkempt, distressed, and she had been raped. Shockingly, Edge of Care staff returned her to the location where she had been raped and failed to report the offense to police or duty social workers until days later.